In this video, I'm going to go over the problems that are in the Unit A test review. So in this first question, it has an inequality. It says if 7x minus 3 is less than 8, what is the value of x? So we have 7x minus 3 is less than 8, so we're going to go ahead and solve this by isolating the variable. Remember, you generally want to add or subtract before you multiply or divide, so I'm going to go ahead and first add 3 to both sides. And so I'm going to get 7x is less than 11. Now, in order to isolate the variable, I need to divide both sides by 7. So when I divide both sides by 7, I get x is less than 11 over 7, and that is now my final answer. So now in this problem, it says if 8x plus 10 equals 5x, then 6x equals what? So remember, this is one of those problems where we can solve without having to fully solve for the variable. So if I have 8x plus 10 equals 5x, let's see what happens when I go ahead and rearrange some of these terms. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5x from both sides. So when I subtract 5x from both sides, I get 3x plus 10 equals 0. Okay, and then I can go ahead and move away the 10. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 10 from both sides. And when I do that, I end up getting 3x equals negative 10. So now I have an expression that tells me 3x, but I actually need to find out the value of 6x, right? Well, if you think about it, how do I get from 3x to 6x? Well, 3x times 2 is equal to 6x, right? So if I take this equation, 3x equals negative 10, and I just multiply both sides by 2, I end up getting 6x equals negative 20. So that's how you can figure out the value of 6x without having to fully solve for the variable. So now let's try this equation. It says solve for x. So this is one of those multi-step equations where we'll have to do our distributive property, combine like terms, move variables to one side, add or subtract to isolate the variable, and then multiply or divide to isolate the variable. Remember, our don't call me after midnight mnemonic. So I'm going to start off by using the distributive property. So I'm going to distribute this 5. So I get 5x plus 5 times 2, which is 10. And that equals, here once again I need to distribute. So I have 6x minus 18. And then I have my plus 20. Okay, so now the next step is to combine like terms whenever possible. So the like terms, remember, we're staying on one side of the equation right now. So here I see I have two like terms. I have a minus 18 and a plus 20. So I'm going to go ahead and combine those. So I have 5x plus 10 equals 6x. And then minus 18 plus 20 gives me plus 2. So I combine my like terms. Now I want to move all my variables to one side. So you can do this one of two ways. You can move the 5x or the 6x. I'm going to move the 5x because I want to end up with a positive coefficient. You can do it the other way, but you'll just have a negative coefficient. So now on the left side, I'm left with just 10, and I have 10 equals 6x minus 5x is just 1x, and then plus 2. And so now I'm going to add or subtract to isolate my variable. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2. And when I subtract 2, I end up with 8 equals x. So that's actually now fully solved. So if you had moved it in a way that you ended up with a negative in front of x, you would actually have to go ahead and divide out the negative as your last step in order to find the variable. Okay, so now let's try question 4. So this is actually one of those ones evaluating functions, but it has an extra twist on it. You're finding two values and then actually adding them together. So let's see what that looks like. So first we're going to find f of 2. That means we're going to go to this f of x. Everywhere we see an x, we're going to plug in a 2 instead. So that means this is going to become 3 times 2 plus 5. Okay, so now I just simplified using order of operations. Remember, I do my multiply first. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 5 means that f of 2 equals 11. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and find this next piece, which is my g of negative 2. So I'm going to go to g of x, and I'm going to plug in negative 2 in place of x. So that means I have 2 times negative 2 minus 4. Okay, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. Now in the final step, all I need to do is take f of 2 and add it to g of negative 2. Okay, so f of 2 I already found is 11, and then I add it to g of negative 2, which is negative 8. 11 plus negative 8 is going to be 3, and that is now my final answer. Okay, so in question number 5, it is wanting us to use properties of exponents. There's actually more than one way you can do this problem, but I actually like to go ahead and kind of follow order of operations. So like I will simplify what's in the parentheses before I work with the power. If you want, you can do the power rule first and then simplify after that, but I prefer to simplify what I have within the parentheses first. Okay, so let's look inside our parentheses. So we have x to the negative 5, y, and remember that y is basically a y to the 1, and that's over y cubed. I have this negative 1 exponent on the outside, but I'm not going to think about that for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify on the inside, and remember I can use the quotient rule. So I'm going to leave that x to the negative 5 alone, but then this y to the 1 over y cubed, okay, I can simplify that, right? I just subtract the exponents, and then I have y to the negative 2, because 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Then my negative 1 exponent is on the outside. Now I can use the power rules, and I can go ahead and put this negative 1 exponent with these exponents I have on the inside. That means I'm going to have x to the negative 5 to the negative 1, and y to the negative 2 to the negative 1. Okay, so now remember to use the power of a power property that tells us that I have to multiply these exponents together. So when I have x, I have negative 5 times negative 1, which is going to be positive 5. For y, I have negative 2 times negative 1, which is going to be positive 2. So x to the 5th y squared is the simplified form of this expression. All right, in question 6, it says Annie's current age is 10 times Josie's age 5 years ago. Josie is currently J years old. What is Annie's current age in terms of J? Okay, so this is like one of those expressions problems we saw. So her current age is 10 times Josie's age 5 years ago. Okay, so that means 10 times, remember 10 times, and then 5 years ago. So that means that we're taking J and then we're subtracting 5, right? So 10 times whatever she was 5 years ago. So that means her current age minus 5. Okay, so that gives us this expression, 10 times J minus 5. And remember, we can simplify this using the distributive property. We're going to distribute that 10 to both terms. So we have 10J minus 50. Okay, so now let's find the x-intercept of a line that has the following equation. Okay, so here the important part is saying find the x-intercept. So the x-intercept, remember, is going to have the form x comma 0 because the y value is going to be 0 wherever the line crosses the x-axis. Okay, remember the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. So everywhere on the x-axis, our y-coordinate is going to be 0. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in y equals 0 to this equation, and that's going to help me find the x-intercept. So I do 3 times 0, so that's 0, equals 4x minus 12. Well, now this is just a linear equation I need to solve, which I can do by adding 12 to both sides. So when I add 12 to both sides, I get 12 equals 4x. Now we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 4. And so that's going to tell me that 3 equals x. Okay, so that means the x-intercept is going to be 3 comma 0. Remember, when we write this, we want to write x comma y. So since y was 0, we write 3, 0. Okay, so in this problem, it says Kevin bought 5 slices of pizza and 1 soda for $22.75. Lisa bought 3 slices of pizza and 2 sodas for $15.75. How much would an order of 1 slice of pizza and 3 sodas cost? Okay, so here we kind of have 2 different things going on, right? So we have 2 sentences describing 2 different situations. So when you see 2 sentences in 2 different situations, that's kind of a clue that you have a system of equations, okay? Because we have, let's see, here's a variable like 5 slices of pizza, if we call that x. Here's another variable, 1 soda, so we could call that y. And then we have like a total. So you see I could write an equation here like 5x plus 1y equals 22.75. Remember, 1 sentence, 1 equation. So here I have Lisa did 3 slices of pizza, so that would be like my 3x. Okay, and then I have 2 sodas, so that would be like 2y. And that equals 15.75. Okay, so if I was going to write this as a system of equations, I'd have 5x plus 1y equals 22.75. My second equation would be 3x plus 2y equals 15.75. So in this final answer, they want us to say how much would an order of 1 slice of pizza and 3 sodas cost. So it's basically saying what is 1x plus 3y equal to, okay? So now let's think about how we want to solve this system of equations. So remember, you want to be on the lookout for a variable you want to eliminate. So if I'm looking at this system, I think y is going to be easier to eliminate because I'm always on the lookout for a coefficient of 1. So here the y has a coefficient of 1, so if I multiply this by negative 2, okay, and turn this into a negative 2y, I can combine it here and cancel out my y's. So that's going to be my strategy in working on this problem. So I do negative 2 times 5x, so I get negative 10x. Negative 2 times 1y, so minus 2y equals, and then I'm going to go ahead and do negative 2 times 2275, and so that's negative 45.5. And I'm going to combine that with that original equation, so that 3x plus 2y equals 1575. I don't need to change that equation, so let's go ahead and add them together. So negative 10x plus 3x is going to be negative 7x. Negative 2y plus 2y, that's just going to cancel out. And then we have negative 45.5 plus 1575, so that's negative 29.75. Okay, so now in order to solve for x, I just need to divide both sides by negative 7. When I divide both sides by negative 7, it gives me x equals 425. Okay, so that's telling me the value of x, which is the price of a slice of pizza. But I'm not done here because I need to find out the value of y also in order to solve for the final answer. So I need to figure out how much sodas cost. So I'm just going to take this x and I can plug it into any of my equations. I'm going to plug it into the first one. So I'm going to do 5 times 425. Okay, so I'm plugging in here to 5x plus 1y equals 2275. So 5 times 425 plus 1y equals 2275. 5 times 425 is 2125 plus y equals 2275. And so I'm going to go ahead and now solve by subtracting 2125 from both sides. And when I do that, I end up getting y equals 2275 minus 2125, which is $1.50. Okay, so I know that sodas cost $1.50 and pizza costs $4.25. But remember, that's not my final answer because it wants me to find 1x plus 3y. So I need to do x plus 3y. So I'm going to take what I found and plug it in. So I have 425 plus 3 times 150. And when I do that, 425 plus 3 times 150, that gives me 875. Okay, and that is the final answer that it's looking for in this problem. Okay, so here in this problem, it says a line passes through the points 0, negative 3, and 2, 7. What is the equation of the line? So a really quick thing you can hopefully recognize in this problem is that 0, negative 3, well, look, that's in the form 0y. This is actually telling us the y-intercept of this problem, which is actually going to be the value of b. Because our equation of the line, we're going to go ahead and write that in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So half of the work is already done for us in this problem. Now we just need to figure out the value of m. So to find the value of m, we're going to use that formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, so remember when I use that formula, I want to go ahead and label my points so I can keep everything organized. So I'm going to call this x1, y1, and this x2, y2. So when I plug in, I get 7 minus y1, which is negative 3, and that's over x2, which is 2, and then minus x1, which is 0. 7 minus negative 3, I just went ahead and turned that into a plus, so I have 10 over 2, which is equal to 5. So my m is 5, my b is negative 3, so I can plug into slope-intercept form. I have y equals 5x plus negative 3, plus negative will combine, so I have y equals 5x minus 3. And that is now my final answer. Okay, so in this question, it wants us to simplify an expression. Remember, to simplify expressions, we have two big things that we do. We distribute and we combine any like terms that we have. Okay, so I'm going to start off by distributing because I see my parentheses. Negative 5 times 3x is negative 15x. And then negative 5 times positive 4 is going to give me minus 20. And then I have a plus 20x hanging out here at the end. Now I can combine my like terms. My like terms are going to be my x terms, so I'm going to go ahead and put them together. So I have negative 15x plus 20x, and then my minus 20. Negative 15 plus 15x plus 20x is going to give me 5x, so 5x minus 20 is the fully simplified form of this expression.